There's nothing quite as anticipated in any company for either the company or the staff than payday. If you're creating payroll on your own, and by that I mean using your own tax tables, which is not necessarily the best in my opinion, then you have to create payroll formulas before you can process payroll. That's how all of the calculations take place. This is a really good time to consider using Peachtree's services to provide those tax tables for you. The cost is really minimal in comparison to your time, effort, and the necessity that everything be absolutely accurate. If you're not going to use Peachtree's tax table service, then at least be sure you have an accountant or Peachtree certified consultant helping you set up the formulas. Creating these formulas is a complex process. I'm going to briefly introduce you to the process and to where the formulas are in a sample file, because we do not have access to a tax table subscription, and in order to create payroll, we have to have at least one formula. With the service, formulas are automatically going to be created for you. Remember, this lesson is not intended to be complete instruction on how to set up formulas. That's an advanced and customized process. In order to explain this to you and demonstrate it to you best, I've actually opened the sample Peachtree file for Bellwether Garden Supply. You can get to that file by either going to File, Open Recent Company, or from the welcome screen, choosing the sample company. With this company open, they already have some formulas defined. Like I said, it's a pretty lengthy process, and I didn't want to make you go through all of that typing, so this will actually have the formulas in place and we can just take a look at them. In order to do so, I'm going to move up to the File menu, come almost all the way to the bottom to Payroll Formulas, and you'll notice that you either have Peachtree Maintained or User Maintained. I'll give User Maintained a click. In the User Maintained dialog box, we can go ahead and scroll forwards and backwards through some of the formulas that are already here. Just like using Previous and Next in many other windows, we can simply scroll. And in this case, I can see that this is the calculation for remaining vacation. I'll go to the previous one again. And again, we're talking about vacation. Now, on the right-hand side, we can see that we have classifications for formulas, either being tax, deduction, benefit, or reimbursement. We're currently looking at the taxes. Other information will be displayed as appropriate. For example, if it's a tax formula, then what is the tax agency, local, federal? Does it apply to all localities? Those types of things. You have a formula ID, and then you also have a name for the formula. Again, just like you're used to, an ID and then a longer name. There are guidelines and links here that can help you for creating names, but remember, this is a complex process, and rather than walking yourself through it, if this is what you're going to do, I recommend that you have some professional guidance. We can then determine whether this has an effect on gross pay and the filing status it applies to. Now, the most important thing I wanted to show you is down here at the bottom, because this is where we get into the formula. Notice that it starts off with a comment, prorate formula created by Peachtree Software. This formula calculates earned vacation hours per pay period by prorating the number of hours to be accrued each year over the course of a year. The formula uses the company's payroll settings. Okay, so far so good. We can read all of that. Now we actually get down to the start of the formula itself. And here's our first line. This is where it gets to be a little bit cryptic. And no, I'm not going to tell you what all of these different things mean because it's kind of like a programming class. Now, I shouldn't scare you. It's actually not like programming, but you certainly have to know how to create things in the proper syntax. In other words, type them so that the computer can understand. We can see maximum vacation hours, annual vacation hours, total accrued this year, vacation remaining, and that is where we start to see some of the math. It continues on to complete the entire formula. A Peachtree file could have tens or hundreds of formulas. And again, this is why I don't want you to try to do this on your own. But I felt like I needed to show you where the formulas are so you're aware that you do have to have them. If you have tax table service, all of these will be created for you. If not, you will need to make sure that yourself or some other professional has them created before you can process payroll. Now that you've had just a little brief overview of what this is, I'm going to close out. And we'll get back to the business that's more important to most of you, which is how do I actually create paychecks? Well, as we've said, one of the responsibilities of an employer is to make sure that you pay your employees and you pay them on time. So we need to make sure that we know how to do that. This actually is a fairly simplified process. We're going to move to the task menu because this is something that we need to do, so it's a task. And just like we had select for deposit and select for payment, this time we're going to choose select for payroll entry. In the dialog box, we can use our filter selection. So, which frequencies are we currently paying? Is it only a weekly payroll, a bi-weekly, a semi-monthly, monthly, and/or annually? And you can remove or add as many of these check marks as are appropriate. It doesn't hurt to leave a check mark on if you don't have anybody who uses that pay method, but you want to make sure, for example, if it's the end of the month and you have to do a weekly and a monthly and a bi-weekly and a semi-monthly all at the same time, that those are all checked. Next, which type of pays do you want to create? Just the hourly, just the salaried, or both? And then, which employees? And of course, you can choose from all of your employees, or you can choose from a range of employees. And then you can, of course, designate that, or you can use employee type. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a very generic, basically including everybody that I have, and I'll say OK. Now we see the Select Employees to Pay box. First thing is, what is your check date going to be? And then, what is your pay end date? And we know that those don't always match. Often, the pay period ended maybe a week before, and then you're getting the check a week later to give payroll the time to process everything. So let's go ahead and move this back a little bit. Let's go ahead and instead of March 15th, let's make this an end of month. But the pay date actually ended the week before. This, of course, will be customized for your particular accounting and the way that you do your payroll. You want to select the cash account from which you're going to pay, and then you simply get to see a list of all the employees. So in this sample file, we have Amanda Chester. We can see her information. The check amount, $832.76, is a regular fee. She has 80 hours, and that's basically what's being paid for her. That's based on a 2-week pay period. Down below, we can see Al Duke, who is getting a check for $391.27 because he only had 40 hours of pay in this one, and that was 1 week of pay. We can continue to scroll down and see how everybody's pay was being calculated. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down just a little bit to show you that we have several employees. When we get down to Brandy Nunley, we can see that she actually has a salary. She's not an hourly employee, so her hours are empty. The salary is filled in, and again, it is important to designate for how many weeks that is for. So let's go back up to the top and see how we can modify some of these things a little bit. If somebody did not work a full 80 hours, we could click there and we could type in the correct number of hours they did work. Maybe Amanda took 5 hours off and she did it without pay, so I'm going to change this to 75. With that, we can automatically see that the calculation for her check amount has adjusted. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to happen. But let's also say that we're going to do something else with Amanda. Let's say that for Amanda, we want to actually have some billable hours, and these billable hours will ultimately be billed to a specific customer. In order to do that, I'm going to select my employee first, in this case Amanda. Then I'm going to come up to the toolbar and click on Jobs. I'm going to select a job, in this case the one for Chapel Law Offices. We can then put in how many hours she worked on behalf of Chapel Law Offices. These are regular hours. And let's put in that she worked 5. This automatically does the calculation that she will be paid $70 for those 5 hours. We also can see that if we have multiple line items, that the total assigned would be 5 in this case and $70, or whatever the total was for both of those. We also have at the bottom hours not assigned to jobs, and currently it says 70 regular hours. Well, isn't that interesting? So, a total of 70 that aren't assigned to a job, plus the 5 that we did assign to the job, comes up to be the total for this check, which was her 75 total hours. So if you're going to pay somebody for hours worked that you will be billing out for a specific job, you do not want to remove those from their total hours first. I started first by saying that Amanda had a total of 75 hours. When I entered 5 hours for Chapel, the math was done, and they said that leaves 70 for regular. All the math is correct. Now I can move up to the top of this box, click OK, and we can see that Amanda is still going to get her 75 hours of pay. We just have made that pay attributable to a specific job. Hold on to that thought for just a minute, and I'll get back and show you how to actually then charge the job for the hours that we entered for Amanda. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and preview the checks. So I've been through this box, I've gone through each of my employees, I've selected who needs to be paid in the far right column using simply the check mark. If I need to make an adjustment, I make that adjustment to either the hours or salary, and I can apply particular hours to particular jobs. Now I'll go up to the print button, and I'll do a preview. In the dialog box, I need to designate what my first printed check number is going to be. In this case, it's 1224. I want one copy. I'm going to go ahead and click Print Preview so you can see it. And other than it's not a very interesting check because it's being printed on plain paper in our preview, this has all of our information. Let me go ahead and click on it to zoom in. And you can see all of the information as well as the itemized deductions on the top or the stub. And then down below we have what normally will print on regular check stock. Remember that your check stock has to have things like a micro number that has to be exactly correct so all of the bank equipment can read it. Usually you're going to go ahead and order that through Peachtree or through some other third-party provider to make sure that you get good quality. Stick it in the printer and print the checks and you'll be good to go. In order to process this, I'm going to click Print on the upper left. And when everything's said and done, it comes back to our Select Employees to Pay, and we'll click on Yes, they printed all right. And then the box closes automatically. So as you can see, the process for processing payroll is actually not very difficult. By going to your task menu, you also could choose to pay one person at a time. Now usually you don't do that, but an occasion for that might be that somebody was fired or they quit and you want to create a last paycheck and do it now, outside of the normal payroll processing. You'll be presented with similar types of options though, except you'll be working with one person instead of all of the ones that you could select by using the filter.